Allison Clark. I'm our student support counselor, which is just a fancy name for I am a professional counselor as well as a school counselor. So this is like near and dear to my heart. So if I get a little passionate, excuse me. Okay. So this is what we're talking about today. Just basically teens and technology. How does that affect their identity, their body image, their self-worth? How does that hurt their relationships? What about addiction? Is that real? And then what can we do as a parent? Okay, so I have a lot of facts, but I think they're really important for us to look at. And a lot of this is old data. So just imagine where we're at now. So 2005 to 2009, cell phone ownership among children nearly doubled. Again, that is such old data, but if it doubled then, think of where we're at now. Almost 1/3 of all 10-year-olds now have their own cell phone, so 10-year-olds. 70% of all teens own a device that has internet anytime they need it. According to the 2010 Nielsen report, US teens text over, again, this is 2010, 4,000 times a month, or about 130 times per day. I think that is huge, and that is also why one of the reasons that that Mr. Toth looked at what are we doing in our classrooms with our phones, and do we need them all the time? Okay, that's 130 times per day that they're looking at something else of what they were looking at. Data shows that all screen activities provide unnatural stimulation to our nervous system. It can cause adverse effects. 1994 to 2003, this is also so fascinating. Our diagnosis of bipolar in children increased 40-fold. Again, it's 2003. Childhood psychiatric disorders such as ADHD, autism spectrum disorders, and tic disorders have been on the rise. Between 2002 and 2005, ADHD medications rose by 40%. Again, we would be ignorant to not look and see if there's any correlation between our technology and these trends. So mental illness is also now the #1 reason for disability filings for children. 2013, DMDD, a lot of you probably don't know what this is. This is disruptive mood dysregulation disorder. We have seen such an increase in that. And many kiddos now are prescribed these antipsychotic medications. We have to ask ourselves, could this be related to technology? Even small amounts of video game play can trigger a fight or flight response. I assume, I know a lot of, this is my world, so I just assume a lot of us know, but do we know what fight or flight is, right? Okay, that is our brain's natural tendency to keep us safe. So if our body is always in this state of mind, it's very hard to learn when we're always thinking, oh my gosh, what's about to happen to me? Okay, one reported that once they removed the electronics and 1 month later, the kids were calmer, their severe and their aggressive behavior dropped by 1/3. So all of this, the research that I'm sharing with you today, it's in a book, and I have it in the end. But it's just, again, it's so fascinating to know what is it doing to our brains. So it's very similar to actually being on an amphetamine, okay? That's what our kids' brains are doing every time that they are looking or continuously on their phone. So let's talk about identity, body image, and self-worth. And I know your first thought, or my first thought is, oh, she's talking about females. I'm not just talking about females, I'm talking about males, okay, as well. But 88% of girls say that they compare themselves to images in the media, and half of them claim that they feel negatively affected by this. Okay, so that's 88%, but what they're not looking at is, where's my fact of 23%? Maybe that's on the next one, or I just haven't gotten to it. The images that they are looking at are so highly altered that that's not even real what they're seeing. So they're looking at these altered pictures, and 88% of them are looking at that and saying, oh, well, that's normal. That's how I should look. No, it's not. That's been altered. They've gone in and they've erased the parts between the thighs. They've erased the sides. They've erased the acne. They've done all of that. So it's so unfair for our kids thinking that that's what's normal. Okay, 70% of girls aged 15 to 17 avoid normal daily activities such as attending school when they feel bad about their looks. As counselors, we can attest to this. This is what we see a lot. A lot of times, we'll have kiddos and we're like, you weren't here yesterday, what was going on? And they're like, I know, I started to get ready and I just couldn't do it. because they didn't like what they were wearing. I had a kiddo in private practice last week that didn't go to homecoming because she put on her dress and then decided she didn't look good in it. And she had been so excited about it and paid for it and everything else. So the way that they see themselves completely will impact the rest of their social and academic and emotional well-being as well. 20% of teens will experience depression before they reach adulthood. 20%. Teenage girls have a negative view of themselves, are 4 times more likely to take part in activities with boys that they've ended up regretting later. 38% of boys in middle school and high school, this is the boy one, report using protein supplements, and nearly 6% admitted to experimenting with steroids. And I would be willing to bet that's higher than what that says. And also, as far as in my counseling world, I'm seeing a large increase in eating disorders for males, for our male teens. I don't know if y'all are seeing any of that as well, but that is something that I am seeing. 75% of girls with low self-esteem report engaging in activities like cutting, bullying, smoking, drinking, or disordered eating. I know that sounds like you're all like, oh, thank you, Ms. Clark, this is so empowering. But we have to know what really is going on and the impact of technology. So this is a really good website, dosomething.org, and you can look that up on there. Also, during our adolescent years, our brain, that is one of the most important times for our brain. So I would say brain impact, the most important is between birth to 6 months, and then it's also our adolescent, okay? That's where it's you're starting to make sense of the world around them. But also the scary part with that is the brain's region that is associated with the desire for attention. So think about it, our teens are wanting that attention. They're wanting feedback, they're wanting reinforcement, they're wanting to figure out the world. Do I fit in, do I not? That is way more sensitive in your adolescent years than almost any other time. So the other part of your self-control part of your brain, that hasn't matured. So that's the scary part. That part hasn't matured, but the part that's wanting so much to feel included and feel like that there's a reason that anybody or that people around them need them, that is like the biggest part that they're trying to reach out to others. So obviously we know that peers, that's a normal part of an adolescent development, but that desire so much for others to I'm trying to think of the word, to acknowledge and think that they are important, that is huge. Let me look at our next one. So again, media, social media, and peer pressure influence the way teens see themselves. We already know that. But their mental perception of what they look like can become distorted, leading them to engage in that risky behavior when they don't feel they measure up to the impossible goal that's set in front of them. So social media's specifically effect on body image can cause self-image issues. Okay, here was the stat I was looking for. The majority of images airbrush versions of model who weigh 23% less than the average woman. Okay, so they're looking at that thinking that that is the norm. That is not the norm. Okay, again, it's been completely altered, and it's also an impossible mold. It's something that our kids aren't going to be able to live up to. Oh, that's when we get to relationships. Okay, I was like, there's something else that I wanted to mention. But let's look at relationships. And I thought this was like so interesting. But since we've come out with this phone that is constantly here, we have seen a deficit in relationships. You probably know that if you have a teen, right? We're also seeing a lack of empathy. They are less able to handle boredom. They cannot handle boredom. They lack the ability to communicate, meaning they don't pay attention to the social cues. It's easier to not have to face problems face to face or to have time to respond. One of the things that that most of us grew up that's different is if a friend came up to you and they were upset, you didn't have time to sit and think about it and respond the next day. You had to interact with them that exact time. Same as a teacher or same as anything like that. They had to have that face-to-face. Now it's easier for them to put their guard up And it's also, they're not seeing the effect that their words have on other people, especially as we call them like what, the keyboard, what do you call them, keyboard something? Warrior, yeah, they can say a lot behind that, but my goodness, when it actually comes time to say it face to face, they won't do it. We also live in a block culture, right? Oh, I don't like what you say, I'll block you. And obviously a cancel culture. So we're living in these times where they're not learning the skills that they need in order to be able to communicate. So there was an article, and she said that the number of teens who get together with their friends nearly every day has dropped by over 40%. Okay, and some of us older people, I'm gonna say the rest of y'all are young, I know this, right? Think about when we grew up. It was so different. Okay, what did we do? Well, I don't know, y'all, again, we all might be way younger. We rode our bikes and we went to people's house and we talked and we hung out, or we sat in the front yard, or we made up clubs. I mean, babysitter club, I had 2 or 3 of them. But we did things. Our kids don't do these together anymore, right? Also, we didn't have, in my opinion, we didn't have all the sports weren't as crazy as they are now. Academics weren't as crazy as they are now. Like, I did not have a clue as a freshman in high school what I wanted to do. And your poor kids have had their plans since they were in like 2nd grade. And they know what school they're going to. And if they don't get into that when they have their second one, that was like not even on my radar. I was playing with my buddy and kid sister in 2nd grade. Okay, so that's one thing that again, the face-to-face has totally gone down. Another part, and this is the part I think one of them that breaks my heart the most, is it desensitizes, I can't say that word, our kids, okay? We are lacking empathy. So the studies show that 36.5% of kids, they've been bullied, cyberbullied specifically. And the price for making these is that you don't see the other part. You don't see the facial reactions of the kids that you're saying these things. They forget that it is a real person on the other side. We see such conversations, or we see such things that kids say, and we have conversations a lot. Well, they will tell a kid, well, you should just go kill yourself. And yes, they do say these things. Or they say, oh, if that was me, I'd just kill myself. So we talk a lot at this campus, and especially like with Hope Squad as well, of those are words that we cannot say. Again, you think, well, no, kids probably don't really say those things. They do. They do. They also, we've lack the compassion to, and thankfully we don't have this problem, I'll be honest with you, at our campus. But if there are people getting hurt, instead of jumping in and saying, oh my gosh, are you okay? What do? They pull out their phones and they start videoing it. So again, we've gotten to a place where we don't have as much empathy as we used to, because it's almost been the norm. Also, when we text, we're losing that human interaction. It strips away the inflection in our voice. I talk about that all the time with our kiddos, is there's 40,000 different ways you can interpret one letter. The letter K, right? That can be K. That can be K. That can be K. I mean, there's so many different ways that just one little letter. And my daughter is like prime example of this. We talk about it all the time because she's like, she was so rude to me. And I was like, why? What'd she say? Well, look. And I'm like, it's not even rude, but okay. But again, that's how her brain's reading it. So you lose that and fluctuation in your voice. You lose body language. And a lot of our kids did not learn body language through COVID, right? Because we had our mouths covered. We did a lot through screens. You didn't get to see what was going on. So, and again, the real-time response. Phones don't give the real-time response, because you can decide when you want to answer, okay? So we don't get to have those hard conversations, as we talk about a lot. You don't get to have those because you're not having them face-to-face. If you don't want to respond, you can say, oh, my phone died, or my mom said I had to get it off the phone. I didn't want to talk. You know, there's so many things. They don't have to be in the moment. Our face is made up of 43 muscles. So it's one of our most complex part of our bodies. And half of the way that we communicate comes through our face and our face muscles. You don't see that, obviously, when you're texting. So certain types of technology used by children and teens can severely diminish their communication and socialization skills if used to avoid difficult face-to-face conversations. Let's look at our next one, which is addiction. So again, this is like that stimulant, okay? Have any of you ever seen a huge difference in your kid when you take the phone away? Like their response, like it is not like their normal self. Like they're normal and then all of a sudden you take their phone away and it's like, who is this alien? That is not my kid. That is because there is a true addiction. It is like a drug. It is like cocaine even. That's how powerful it is. And again, it puts the body into this high state of arousal and this hyper focus followed by a crash. So sometimes like all these chemicals and this hormonal cascades going on in their body, and as soon as they don't get it or they've had too much of it, they have this drop. It can be seen as an addiction because it can involve certain factors that include the inability to control the amount of time spent on their technology. And again, this isn't just kids, this is us too. Let's be honest. I am real good about saying, okay, I'm gonna put my phone away, and then 20 minutes later, I'm like, well, I think I need to make sure I don't have an email. Okay, we all do that. Our need for more time or new technology related things to achieve desired effects, again, I mean, just think of where we've come, like our phones, it's crazy to think of like our first phone, if you had to like do the texting where you had to push the same letter to get and it took you 45 minutes, right? And our only game was the centipede thing that you did up and down. Just to think of how far we come. What's going to come? I mean, look at AI. I mean, oh my gosh. They experience the withdrawal symptoms when they're not engaged. This is huge, but I think, and Mr. Toth could speak to this, we've seen such a decrease with this that the kids have actually enjoyed. Not having their phones all the time in class, they've actually mentioned that it feels good just to sit in class and just be present. Continuing the obsessive behavior despite the negative consequences it has on one's life and health impact on their social life, work, or school. So again, our kids know a lot of these. We know a lot of them, but we still participate, right? So one of the questions to ask yourself is addiction. Are they pushing everything else away? Are they not as involved in their sports, their friends, their school, their socializing? This is also something that we're seeing in the counseling world, is they're stopping their activities because they'd rather come home and play video games, okay? And I'm gonna have a really hard conversation right now with you as parents. One of the big things and I will push too, is when we talk about sleep, and I'll say, okay, where's their phone at night? Well, they need it to go to sleep. Okay, I get it, I promise you. But they don't have to have it to go to sleep. And a lot of them, I know. I've heard everything, I promise you. Well, yes, they do. They need the music. They need this, they need this, they need this. Every single time they look at that phone, it sends another dopamine response. So even if it's just looking to see what time it is, it sends a response and it wakes their brain back up going, okay, what's coming up next? What's next? So I think we have to be honest with ourselves when it comes to the addiction part and asking, could our kids possibly have an addiction? Here's some symptoms that you could ask yourself. Is it hard for your kiddo to stop screen time? Does it keep increasing the amount of time that they want to be on it? Do they sneak it? And if you're like, no, they don't, you'd be surprised. I'd also hate to tell you how many of your kids probably have a phone that you don't even know about. Okay, that's another thing that we deal with a lot of times, is these kids have these, what do we call them, trap phones? Yeah, that they have access to. My child needs more intense and novel games and apps to reach the same level of satisfaction. Tetris is not going to work sometimes, so then they're going to have to go to higher ones. Same thing for those that play like the online games. And if you're not aware of what they're playing and you're not listening in on the things that they are hearing, you need to, because some of those can be pretty vulgar. When my child has a bad day, screen media seems to be the only thing that helps him or her feel better. My child thinks obsessively about their game or their phone when they're not using it. My child's screen media use causes problems for the family. My child's academics, activities, or health are suffering because of electronics. My child is becoming more and more isolated. These are all a pretty significant sign that there could be an addiction, okay? Or for you. I mean, let's be honest. And listen, my kid is the first one, because I do preach this all the time. She's the first one to call me out. So I have to be honest with myself sometimes. So what can we do? Again, we can model good behavior. And I have to do this a lot, because I'm an open and honest. I've had to be really intentional about stoplights. Why? What do we tend to do when we get to a stoplight? Oh my God. Pull out your phone. Pull out your phone, right? So I've had to be really intentional about that, because she's not driving yet, but I know she's going to be. I've also had to be very intentional, and I've gotten called out a few times about texting while I'm driving. And I will tell you I know not to do this, but I'm like, oh no, I just have to tell them I'm on my way. Or, we can make up 1,000 excuses, but we need to be able to model it. Encourage privacy. I am blown away, just speaking bluntly and honestly, how many of your kids have social media and have all kinds of things, and there is no privacy. You need to make sure that they have all of their accounts private, and that they have those conversations all the time. And I know they're gonna roll their eyes at you, that's fine. But have those conversations about, hey, if somebody messages you, you need to understand that could possibly not be who you think it is, okay? It doesn't necessarily mean that it is a sophomore at PHS. It could be a 70-year-old man that's sitting in his basement, okay? We have to have these conversations. Texting can be tricky. There's nothing private, okay? I know we think there is. Nothing is private anymore. I would encourage you to match their screen time with exercise time. If you're like, my kid's not gonna exercise, then what else can they do? Can they read? Can they, when they come home, have a routine with them. All right, I want you to study for 20 minutes before you get on your phone, or, do something before you get on your phone. This sleep sanctuary, that is huge. A bedroom free of electronics. Again, I know you're like, that's never gonna work. They need their phone for the alarm. I hate to tell you, but there's these things they plug into the wall, and you can actually, I remember mine from college. It was the most annoying thing, okay? They work. Also, sometimes they don't even, if that's, you're like, I can't do that, then have them put their phone in their closet or somewhere else that they can still hear it. What's really fun is they actually make moving alarm clocks that are balls, and so you can set it and it moves, so they actually have to get out of bed to go get it. So great. I know, see? And one of the things when I was studying this, because again, I told you I'm a really big nerd, especially when it comes to the brain, is like the colors and everything else and the impact of that. And like back in the day before we had any of this, like back in Tarzan's day, they didn't have any type of phone, they didn't have electricity, so how did they get up, how did they go to bed? Everything was done by the sun, right, and the moon. So the sun has natural vitamin D in it to wake you up, the moon has natural melatonin in it to tell you it's time to go to bed. So they actually make little lights that they do the same thing. Like in the morning you can set your alarm, and instead of it making a noise, the light comes on. Same as at night. And again, I can talk about that all day, but we need to make sure they have some type of sleep routine. I also, and again, I'm very frank with parents. I'm blown away when I'm like, hey, what time does your kid go to bed? And they're like, I don't know, 2, 3. That's fine in the summer, but in school, guys, the number one thing, for mental and social emotional health is their sleep. Okay, if they are not getting enough sleep, it will throw everything else off. It can actually, like one of the studies I heard the other day is like that one, there was a man that was misdiagnosed with schizophrenia because he wasn't sleeping. It had nothing to do with schizophrenia. It was due to his sleep. So sleep is huge. So I beg you, make sure they're getting enough sleep. And I mean, my thing, and again, you can roll your eyes at me, don't do it here, just do it in your head, is have them plug their phone in it downstairs or somewhere else that is not in their room to charge their phone. That's what I would suggest. But again, make sure you're bonding with your kiddo. I cannot tell you how important human touch is. Sitting at the dinner table, you all know this, you've heard all the research. And we're horrible at it as a culture. Most of us don't sit at the table anymore together because they've got football, and then they've got a club meeting, and then they've got this, and they've got this. And I'm not saying those things are bad, but we've got to make time and be intentional about connecting together. So here's some of these websites, the Family Tech Planner. You can do that as a family, where you all come up together with a plan. Digital hygiene, the tips, and I think Mr. Toth will send this out, our tips to reset your child's brain. I think that's where I got this book that I was, or maybe it's in here. But that's some really good things. I highly suggest doing a reset. You know, I don't know what that looks like for your family. Maybe it's once a week, maybe it's once a month. Can your family, your entire family, go a whole day without their phone? If you can't, can you go 4 hours? One of my guys that I used to work with that taught with me when I was a teacher, they had, their thing was on Fridays and Saturdays from 4 to 8, no technology. So, I mean, that was just their time as a family, and it was very protected. So how can you get creative with bringing back your family time? I think, yes, that is all that I had. Do you have any questions for me? Except you. Yes, I'm just kidding. Miss Easley, she's one of our other counselors.
Really great information. Just one question.
Yes.
Do you consider TV to be addictive as well? Because I didn't hear you say anything about the television.
I do, and listen, it's very easy for me to say that now because my kid's 13 and not 2 and 3. Because at 2 and 3, I'd have been like, I don't care what you tell me. I just gotta breathe. And she can understand because she has 3-year-old twins. But yes, it is because it's the light flickering, it's the sounds, it's what it does to our nervous system. And so they're looking for that constantly. I mean, look at how far just our cartoons have come. My gosh. I mean, so yes, I do, and I'm so sorry because.
Well, those are like I don't know the research specifics, but it's how many times the screen changes and
yes.
how fast the brain has to work. Kids can't just sit in a room and listen to a speaker because it's not changing every 5 seconds, and so that's
1,000%. So that's why also they struggle in the classroom because. Watch your kid. What do they do on their phone? It's constantly this, right? Well, they won't even read a whole article anymore, okay? They'll read like the first 3 sentences and they go on. College professors also talk about that they can't get the kids to have enough mental capacity to actually read anything that they're supposed to read anymore. Because our time back in, I don't know, before all of this, it was like, I want to say, and I'm so wrong on this, but let's say I say like 68 to 72 seconds of what it used to be before it would need to go back. Now we're at 8 seconds. Okay, so that's what our brain is constantly used to. So them being able to do and maintain and like retain anything or even have the wherewithal to read a whole article, they can't do it anymore.